Hey guys, welcome back. I got an amazing episode with you today. I'm doing it with Mr. E, and we're going to be answering the question, how do you divide inherited property between siblings? So today I have multiple points to share with you, and I've also brought on an expert that has inherited property before with siblings, and we're going to walk you through how to do it so that no one is upset, and just multiple ways of advice for you. So let's jump right into it. All right, guys, so I want to introduce you to Mr. E. He is actually the expert in this video. I personally have never inherited property. I've been on the other end where I bought a bunch of inherited property, and Mr. E has actually inherited property from his mother and has a couple siblings. How are you today, Mr. E?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well,
Thanks
Brent.
for being on this call.
Thank you
for
not
this call, but this video.
Yeah.
So,
Not a problem.
as a person that's went through what you've been through, sorry for the loss of your mother, and she left you a townhome. What advice would you give to someone that wants to split up an inherited property?
My advice would be make sure everything's out in the open early on before, if you're aware that the day may be coming where your relative that is ill or nearing their last moments. Make sure that any information is shared at that point.
So a lot of communication.
Yeah, a lot of communication is very key. Those are things that need to be talked about before it's too late.
So what would you say is the best form of communication? Would it be like just everyone going out to dinner, a Zoom call, like in person at the house? I get it, a lot of people are nationwide. What would you think is the best form of communication?
Well, obviously if they're in the same town, it's always best to do it in person. But if you can't do it in person, if you have somebody out of town, absolutely Zoom call will work just as well, or FaceTime or whatever from that aspect. But definitely that's one of the key points before. It's going to save a lot of headaches on the tail end of that situation.
Love that. What would you say is your biggest lesson? I know you already said put it out in the open, but what would you say was the hardest, biggest lesson of, splitting it up, your mom's, estate between siblings, multiple siblings? Because it wasn't just one person. You got two other sisters.
Two sisters. There's a lot of personal issues going back and forth. In our particular case, and many people may be going through similar situations, this is something that needs to be ironed out earlier than later. And always best if the person is still able to speak. If they, if you can clear it out early on, you can work those issues out and hopefully come to a situation understanding that everybody understands why decisions were made. And that's all.
Got it. No, thanks very much for sharing that. So, that's one of the things I can't say enough is the communication process. Now, if you wanted to divide, if you wanted to change the ownerships of it, if it's in the will, ultimately that's the decision of the person that created the estate, that usually passed away and left things. But these things can be overturned by usually an attorney, and it can be changed around. And I highly recommend using an attorney to do it if you wanted to change. Now, if you guys would have wanted to change something as far as the splitting it up, was it simple to do? Was it just a call to the attorney?
I think if it was discussed before, it would have been pretty easy to make modifications. Even on a Zoom call could have been done. But situations arose, and it happened, and she was gone, and it was a little more difficult, and that caused a lot of stress between our family.
Yeah.
So I just would advise to try and avoid that at all costs.
Yeah, and if you're going to do it, that definitely it's going to take, from a real estate attorney. Now, one way in the state of Florida that we can avoid probate is trust. Putting things in a trust. And I even told my parents this just the other weekend. We were talking about it, and I was like, look, I've had conversations with probate attorneys, and they said 9 out of 10 siblings no longer speak when parents leave properties and divide it up. One way to avoid that is putting things in a trust, and a trustee handles it, and it's completely taken out of the kid's hands where no one has a say so except for the actual person that created the estate or the trust and the trustee that's put in place of it. So ultimately, I think that's the best thing you can do for your children, if you don't want to, divide siblings by leaving them things. That's the fastest way. Guys, I hope you're getting a ton of value from this. Smash that subscribe button and comment if you've ever been through something like this in your history. So for the people there's a lot of people out there that don't like to rock the boat. I'm one of those. Like, I don't want to have conflict, especially with my sister or my brother. What do you do? Like how do you just get through that if it's too late? If the mom or the dad's already passed and left it, what's your biggest advice for the person that it's just too late? And then I'll ask another question, like, what do you do to rock the boat in the beginning to save the later on catastrophe that could happen with the divided?
I would recommend, if at all possible, before working it all out while the person is still alive. But if you can't, there are situations where you can't. Pray to God that you have a solid will and that everything is properly documented so that there's no headaches afterwards. But I will tell you that if you do have the opportunity, take that opportunity, because once it's gone, it'll never come back.
So it sounds to me like you have to have some really hard conversations.
Oh, absolutely.
Right off the bat to hopefully continue the conversation for the future, for the better things. So, no, I appreciate that so much, Mr. E, for being vulnerable and sharing your experience. I hope this video helps. Again,
I hope it helps too.
Remember what I said about the trust. Set your property up in a trust. Take it out of your children's hands. Not that you can't trust them, but you want your children to remain siblings and friends for the rest of their lives, even after you're gone. So hopefully that was good advice. And guys, if you're dealing with a situation like this and you have a property that you've inherited, let's turn this blessing and keep this a blessing. If you're looking to sell this property or whatever you and your siblings decide to do with the communication that Mr. E talked about, if you're looking to sell it, I'd be happy to walk you through some ways that we can buy it or also refer you to another buyer. We're all over the nation. Head on over to ZechBuysHouses.com and hopefully we can be of some service to you.